The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I'd been helping my granddaughter Emma with her history project about Confederation, and we'd just decided to call it a night. The number showed my younger brother's name, Vincent. Thomas, his voice came through, flat and cold. Dad passed away last night. Heart attack. The funeral's on Saturday at Morrison & Sons in Calgary. I'm handling all the arrangements. You should know he left everything to me. The ranch, the investments, everything. You're not in the will. I thought you should hear it from me before Saturday. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there in my den in Lethbridge, staring at my phone. My father, Robert Morrison, dead at 79? Just like that? I'd spoken to him 3 days ago. He'd sounded fine, tired, maybe, but fine. We'd talked about the Flames' playoff chances and whether we should finally fix the fence line on the North 40 before spring calving season. Emma poked her head around the corner. "Grandpa, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Just your great-uncle Vincent with some unexpected news, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." But I was worried, very worried, because here's what Vincent didn't know. I'd been at the ranch that very morning. You see, I'm 63 years old, and I'd spent 42 of those years working alongside my father on the Morrison Ranch, 3,000 acres of Alberta grassland that had been in our family since 1891. Vincent, 59 and 4 years my junior, had left for Vancouver after high school, chasing what he called real opportunities in commercial real estate. He'd visit maybe once a year, usually when he needed something. When Dad started showing signs of confusion 2 years ago, missing appointments, forgetting conversations, Vincent suddenly became very interested in family matters. He flew in, all concerned and attentive, and within a month had convinced Dad to sign a power of attorney just to make things easier. That's when things started changing. Dad's bank statements showed regular withdrawals, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. When I asked about them, Dad seemed confused. "Vincent says it's for the ranch operations," he'd tell me. But I handled the ranch operations, and I hadn't seen a cent of that money. Then came the isolation tactics. Vincent told the staff at Chinook Village Seniors Residence, where Dad had moved after a fall last November, that I was upsetting Dad with my visits. He instructed them to limit my access. He changed Dad's phone number without telling me. He even tried to convince Dad's doctor that I was making him anxious. But here's what Vincent didn't count on. Mrs. Patricia Chen, the day shift supervisor at Chinook Village, had known our family for 30 years. Her daughter had been in Emma's mother's grade 12 class. And Mrs. Chen didn't like what she was seeing. "Thomas, she'd pulled me aside 3 weeks ago. Something's not right. Your brother's been bringing papers for your father to sign, legal documents, and I probably shouldn't say this, but he's been asking about your father's medication schedule, specifically about his heart medication." That's when I started keeping detailed records. I documented every visit. I recorded conversations legally, with proper consent. I photographed documents Vincent left behind. I kept copies of every bank statement I could access. My daughter Sarah, a paralegal in Calgary, helped me understand what I was seeing. Systematic financial exploitation, potentially worth over $450,000 in withdrawals over 18 months. But it was Father Murphy from Street Michaels who became my most important witness. Dad had asked him to visit regularly, and Father Murphy had sharp eyes. He noticed when Dad seemed over-medicated. He noticed when Vincent would show up with whiskey, encouraging Dad to drink despite his medications. He noticed, and he started keeping his own journal. So when Vincent called to announce Dad's death, every alarm bell in my head went off. I waited until Emma went to bed, then I got in my truck and drove the 200 kilometers to Calgary. It was past 2 a.m. when I pulled into the Chinook Village parking lot. The night supervisor, Mark Davidson, buzzed me in immediately. "Mr. Morrison," he said quietly, "I was hoping you'd come. Your brother was here earlier, very agitated. He kept asking about accessing your father's room, talking about getting his affairs in order. But here's the thing." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "Your father's not dead, sir. He's upstairs right now, sleeping soundly. I checked on him 20 minutes ago." The world tilted sideways. "What did you just say?" "Your father is alive, Mr. Morrison. I don't know what your brother told you, but Mr. Robert Morrison is very much alive." I took the stairs 2 at a time. Room 307. I knocked softly, then let myself in with the key Mrs. Chen had given me months ago. Dad was there, sitting up in bed, reading a Louis L'Amour Western by the nightstand lamp. Thomas? He looked surprised, but pleased. Bit late for a visit, isn't it? I sat down heavily in the visitor's chair. Dad, Vincent just called me. He said you died last night. Heart attack. He said the funeral's on Saturday. For a moment, Dad just stared at me. Then, slowly, a strange expression crossed his face, not confusion, but something sharper. Knowing, did he now? Dad set down his book, and I suppose he mentioned he's inheriting everything? He did. Dad nodded slowly. Thomas, I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to not react right away. Can you do that? Dad, what's going on? I haven't had dementia for the past 6 months, son. I've been pretending. The words hung in the air between us. You've been pretending? Sit down, Thomas. This is going to take a minute. Dad shifted, suddenly looking much sharper than he had in months. About 8 months ago, I started noticing the money missing. I'm old, not stupid, and I noticed how Vincent was acting too interested, too helpful. So I started playing dumb, confused old man who couldn't remember signing documents. Meanwhile, I was paying attention to everything. He opened his nightstand drawer and pulled out a thick folder. I've got copies of every document he's had me sign. The real estate lawyer he brought in? I recorded those sessions on that little device Sarah gave me last Christmas. The one Vincent thought was a hearing aid. Dad's smile was grim. I've got him talking about how he'd use the ranch sale money, how he was planning to put me in a facility and take over everything, how much he resented you for being Dad's favorite. But why not just tell me? Why keep pretending? Because I needed to know how far he'd go, Dad said quietly. I needed to know if my own son would actually try to harm me for money. And Thomas, his voice cracked slightly, I needed to know if you'd give up on me. Vincent kept telling me you would, that you were just waiting for me to die so you could sell the ranch yourself, that everyone was just after the money. Dad, but you didn't give up. You came 3 times a week, every week, even when they tried to turn you away. You brought Emma. You read to me. You talked to me about the ranch, about the family, like I mattered, like I was still me. Dad's eyes were wet. You documented everything, didn't you? You were protecting me. I nodded, unable to speak. Then 3 weeks ago, Vincent made his real move. Dad's expression hardened. He brought me what he said was my heart medication. New prescription, he said. Doctor's orders. But I'd been checking all my medications since I started suspecting him. This wasn't my medication. This was digoxin, cardiac medication, but prescribed in doses way higher than anyone should take unless they're trying to stop a heart. The room spun. He was trying to kill you. I didn't take them. I've been palming pills for 3 weeks now, pretending to take them. Kept every single one in a baggie. Mrs. Chen's been helping me. She's a witness to all of it. And yesterday, Vincent got impatient. He asked Mrs. Chen about my medication schedule, about when I took my pills, about how long after taking them before someone should check on me. My God. Mrs. Chen called Father Murphy. Father Murphy called your friend Gerald at the RCMP. Gerald called his friend in the Calgary Police Services Elder Abuse Unit. Thomas, there are detectives who've been watching Vincent for the past week. They've got him on camera trying to convince the pharmacy to increase my prescription. They've got recordings of him telling his girlfriend in Vancouver about waiting for the payout. Dad reached over and squeezed my hand. And they've got his call to you tonight, declaring me dead when I'm sitting right here. That's fraud, combined with everything else. Your brother's going to prison. But the funeral? He mentioned Morrison and Sons. He's been planning it for weeks, apparently. Paid deposits, ordered flowers, wrote an obituary, all while I'm alive. The detectives think he was going to either kill me this weekend or simply declare me dead and forge a death certificate somehow. They're not entirely sure Vincent's desperate enough that his plans are getting sloppy. I sat back, trying to process it all. How long have the police known? About 2 weeks. Father Murphy came to me, told me what you'd documented and what he'd witnessed. We went to the RCMP together. They brought in the Calgary police. I had to keep pretending, Thomas. They needed Vincent to make his final moves, to have enough evidence for attempted murder, not just financial exploitation. And the will he mentioned? Dad smiled. The real will is with Howard Chen, Patricia's husband, my actual lawyer for 40 years. Vincent doesn't know about it. In the fake will Vincent had me sign, everything goes to him. In the real will, the ranch goes to you, to be held in trust with provisions for both Emma and Sarah. The investments are split between establishing a scholarship fund for agricultural students at the University of Lethbridge and providing for my care. Vincent gets my truck and $5,000, which is more than he deserves. A knock at the door interrupted us. 2 plainclothes detectives entered, badges out. "Mr. Morrison? Mr. Thomas Morrison?" the woman asked. "I'm Detective Sarah Huang, Calgary Police Service. We've been coordinating with your local RCMP. We're going to need you to come with us, please. Your brother Vincent just arrived at Morrison & Sons funeral home with documents declaring your father deceased. We're about to make contact." The funeral home was only 15 minutes away. When we arrived, there were already 3 police vehicles in the lot, unmarked but unmistakable if you knew what to look for. Inside, Vincent was in the arrangement room with Frank Morrison, no relation, just an unfortunate coincidence of names going over flowers and casket options. Vincent was dressed in black, playing the grieving son perfectly. "I want something dignified but not ostentatious," Vincent was saying. "Dad was a simple rancher. He wouldn't want anything flashy. Maybe the oak casket? And for flowers, I'm thinking." "Hello, Vincent." He spun around. I was standing in the doorway, Detective Huang and Detective Brooks flanking me. "Thomas? What are you doing here?" Vincent's face went white. "I could ask you the same thing, seeing as how Dad's not actually dead." "What are you talking about?" "Dad died yesterday. Heart attack. Vincent Morrison?" Detective Huang stepped forward, badge visible. "We need to talk about some irregularities. Starting with the fact that Robert Morrison is very much alive, and you've just attempted to arrange funeral services for a living person. This is ridiculous. There must be some mistake. Your father is at Chinook Village, awake and well, with officers currently taking his statement," Detective Brooks said. "We'd also like to discuss the $450,000 you've withdrawn from his accounts over the past 18 months, the forged power of attorney documents, and the fraudulent prescription for digoxin you attempted to obtain from Bridgeland Pharmacy last Tuesday." Vincent looked at me, and for a moment I saw something break in his eyes, not remorse, but the realization he'd been caught. "You did this," he hissed. "You turned them against me. You've always been Dad's favorite, always gotten everything." "I took care of him," I said quietly. 3 times a week, every week, even when you told them not to let me see him. I was there because he's my father, not because of money. Vincent Morrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, elder abuse, and financial exploitation." Detective Huang moved forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." Frank Morrison stood there, stunned, while Vincent was read his rights. As they let him out, Vincent turned back to me one last time. "This should have been mine," he said. "I'm his son too." "Being a son isn't about inheritance," I replied. "It's about showing up." The trial took 11 months. Vincent's lawyer tried everything, claimed Dad was mentally incompetent, claimed the recordings were falsified, claimed I'd manipulated Dad against him. But the evidence was overwhelming. 3 weeks of pills Vincent thought Dad was taking, all tested and confirmed as lethal dosages, bank records showing systematic theft, recordings of Vincent discussing Dad's death like a business transaction, and most damning, the footage from Bridgeland Pharmacy, where Vincent, thinking he was alone, had said to his girlfriend on the phone, "Once the old man's gone, we'll have enough to buy that condo in Yaletown, and never think about that dusty ranch again." The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Vincent was sentenced to 12 years in prison, 8 for attempted murder, with additional consecutive sentences for fraud and elder abuse. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Justice Margaret Thompson, didn't mince words. "Mr. Morrison, you betrayed not only your father's trust but the fundamental bond between parent and child," she said. "You saw your father's vulnerability not as a call to care for him, but as an opportunity to exploit him. You were willing to end his life for financial gain. The sentence reflects the severity of these crimes and serves as a warning. Elder abuse will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law in this province." Dad was in the courtroom that day. He sat beside me, dressed in his best suit, looking more like his old self than he had in 2 years. When the sentence was read, he didn't look triumphant. He just looked sad. "No father should have to do this," he said quietly as we left. But I couldn't let him hurt anyone else. That was 14 months ago. Dad's 80 now, still living at Chinook Village, but in the independent living wing. He plays bridge on Tuesdays, volunteers at the library on Thursdays, and has Sunday dinner with me, Sarah, and Emma every week without fail. The ranch is in a trust now, managed jointly by Sarah and me, with provisions that ensure it stays in the family and can never be sold without unanimous consent of all living descendants. The $450,000 Vincent stole, most of it was recovered and sits in an educational trust, funding scholarships for rural students studying agriculture or rural health care. Dad insisted on it. Money that almost destroyed our family should be used to help other families, he said. That's the only way to make something good come from something so ugly. Emma, now 17, is applying to universities. She wants to study law, specializing in elder rights. Because of great-grandpa, she tells people. Because I saw what can happen, and I want to stop it from happening to other families. I think about Vincent sometimes, especially when I'm out on the ranch, riding fence lines or checking cattle. I wonder if he thinks about it, if he understands what he threw away. Not just money or property, but family. Trust, love. Because here's what I learned from all this, and what I wish I could make Vincent understand. Family isn't about who gets what when someone dies. It's about who shows up when someone's alive. It's about 3 visits a week, even when you're turned away. It's about reading Louis L'Amour westerns at midnight in a nursing home room. It's about helping your granddaughter with history projects when you'd rather be sleeping. It's about showing up not because you'll inherit something, but because you love someone. Dad likes to say he played possum to catch a rat. I tell him he was braver than I ever could have been pretending to be helpless while gathering evidence against his own son. I had to know who'd love me when I had nothing left to give, he told me once, late at night over coffee. And Thomas, you kept showing up, even when Vincent told everyone you were after the money, even when they limited your visits, even when I seemed like I didn't know who you were anymore. You showed up because I'm your dad. That's all I needed to know. If you're reading this or listening to this story, and you have aging parents or relatives, let me share what I learned. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Financial exploitation of the elderly is one of the fastest growing crimes in Canada, with seniors losing an estimated $1 billion annually to family members and caregivers. Second, document everything. I kept records, I took photos, I made notes. That documentation was crucial in building the case against Vincent. If you suspect abuse, write it down, date it, keep copies. Third, know the warning signs. Sudden changes in financial situations. New best friends or relatives who suddenly become very interested. Isolation from longtime friends and family. Unexplained signatures on documents. Changes in wills or powers of attorney that don't make sense. Fourth, there are resources. Every province in Canada has adult protection services. The Canadian Centre for Elder Law has resources and information. The RCMP has elder abuse units. You're not alone, and there are people who can help. Fifth, and most importantly, show up, be present, visit regularly, call, write letters. Make it clear through your actions, not your words, that your relationship isn't transactional. Because that presence, that consistency, that love, that's what matters. That's what my dad needed to see to know the truth. And that's what made all the difference. Dad's going to be 81 next month. We're planning a big party at the ranch, his first time back since he moved to Chinook Village. Emma's organizing it. Sarah's handling the legal details to make sure it's all properly documented and insured, and I'm making sure the fence line is fixed, and the cattle are moved to the far pasture, so Dad can see the land he loves without livestock in the way. Vincent won't be there, of course. He's got 11 more years before he's eligible for parole. Dad writes him occasionally, short letters about the weather and the ranch. Vincent never writes back. Maybe someday he will. Maybe someday he'll understand what he lost. But we'll be there. 3 generations of Morrisons, plus Father Murphy and Mrs. Chen and half of Chinook Village's staff, celebrating a man who survived his own son's betrayal and came out the other side stronger. Because that's the thing about family, the real kind. It's not about blood or inheritance, or who gets the ranch when someone dies. It's about who shows up with love when someone's alive. And I learned from my father that when tested, when everything's on the line, The people who truly love you will always show up. That's the inheritance that matters. That's what I'll pass down to Emma and Sarah. And that's what Vincent never understood. Sitting in that funeral home, arranging services for a man who wasn't dead, counting money he'd stolen from his own father. The real wealth was never in the bank accounts or the property deeds. It was in the choice to show up 3 times a week, every week, even when it was hard, even when there was nothing to gain, especially then.